Yeah, but here to talk about that, Kai Abram. Kai Abram is our gold expert with LKA Gold Incorporated. LKAI is their stock symbol. They're LKAgold.com.
Oh, great
But it
website.
is the greatest treasure on the West. Kai, how are you, sir? Great to have you along, buddy.
I'm well. How are you, Sully?
Good to see you. So,
I just want to buy some boots and a backpack and join the hunt.
So Kai, here's my question for you. Take folks through why what you guys are doing. You're not a traditional mining company. You're never going to be. You say, and you said the first time you're on the air with us, that you guys are treasure hunters, which makes it a really interesting story. I'm going to let you take over and talk about that for a minute.
Well, the reason we call ourselves treasure hunters is because the deposit that we're focused on was the richest gold deposit in terms of its grade in modern history. I mean, most mines will, they've got high-grade zones and they'll mine for years, and maybe they get as high as Barrick Gold Strike's property, a third of an ounce of gold per ton that that made them kind of the standard in the business.
Yeah.
Our property, by comparison, though, makes that look sick. I mean,
all right, talk about that, because you got a great video on your website that talks about that.
When we discovered this deposit, we were excited by the extremely high assays we were getting. When we finally found it and put it into production, we averaged 16 ounces of gold per ton for 6 years. So, I mean, here you got Barrick, one of the world's biggest producers, and their gold standard property, no pun intended, is averaging a third of an ounce per ton, and here we're producing 16 ounces. Now, of course, they produce many more tons than we do, but our profit margins are big enough to choke a horse. I mean, we were producing an ounce of gold for less than $80.
So you're actually major miners.
Thank you, everybody.
What? How does that work? I could be here all week. Major miners. I'll be here.
So tell us, how did you guys? I hate to use the word stumble on this, but you are gold miners. How did you find this, Kai? How did this all come about? Tell me a little history about it.
Well, we started looking for a project for the last time gold took off. I mean, really took off in a noticeable way back in the early 80s during the Carter administration. Our clients came to us and said, "Hey, we want a gold project. We want an inflation hedge." So we scoured the West and we looked around and decided that we couldn't compete with the majors in these giant deposits in Nevada and other places that would cost $50 million or $150 million to put into production. Our geologists came to us and said, "Hey, look, why don't you guys go pick up the things that the majors can't touch? The things that require the sort of mining they don't do." Now, when I talk about the majors and their mining, I know this is going to hurt their feelings if they're listening, but they're not really miners, they're dirt movers. We're more traditional miners in the ways of the Old West, where we go in and find a vein and then we extract just that vein material. We don't tear down a mountain of material.
Sure.
Try to process 1,000 tons before noon every day.
And that's a nimble way to mine. I want to skip over, by the way. You can go to LKAgold.com and check it out, because gold is in the news all day today. There's talk of a gold rally coming up, which is why I wanted you to be here, because you're one of those guys that's an expert. Talk to us about this Golden Wonder mine, because that's what you started off talking about. It was the richest producing gold mine in terms of ore grade in modern times. Talk about where you guys are at with that, and how much time that's taken you and how much effort that's going to take you over the next let's say 6 to 18 months.
Well, it was an interesting exploration project when we discovered it in the 80s, looking for a project for our clients. We knew that it must be there. When I say it must be there, we knew that there was a fabulous source to this enrichment. We finally discovered it. Well, gold was dead through the 90s. You couldn't borrow a dime to use on a project like this. But we finally hit the mother lode in about 1998. And when we did, it was just incredibly rich. I mean, assays off the charts. I mean, it was not uncommon to find 100 ounces per ton in some of the ore that we were mining. Now, of course, that resulted in an average production grade, as I said before, 16 ounces of gold per ton. But the way this deposit occurs is in ore chutes. It's kind of in the vent system of a volcano, not kind of actually. And if you can imagine a volcano, it's got multiple vents.
Yeah.
Well, we stumbled on one of them. Stumbled is probably not an accurate term, but because we spent a lot of money looking for it, we finally found it. And where there's one vent in a volcano, there's multiple vents. And our mission now, after we mine the first ore chute, is to find the rest of them. And we know they're there because we've got signatures on the surface, and we're getting ready to start a drilling program and go.
Hey, Kai, I got a question. So do you need?
great.
It really is. It's really interesting. LKAgold.com.
that.
LKAI is their stock symbol, and Kai Abraham is our guest. Kyle, do you need some sort of regulatory approval to do that? What's our biggest fear in business is regulation, and environmental regulation seems to be the most onerous. Talk to us about regulatory approval to commence drilling there.
Any wild birds in the neighborhood
right.
you need to save?
Fairy shrimp.
Yeah, wild birds, and in this case, a lynx that has never been seen there before was causing a problem for a little while. But Sully, we've got all the permits. We have had for years. When we want to drill in new areas, that requires an amendment to our permit, which is infinitely easier to get than brand new permits. And we're surrounded by some real sensitive wilderness areas, so we're very mindful of what's going on around us from an environmental standpoint. And our model is to keep our environmental footprint as small as we possibly can. Again, in contrast to the major miners, we're looking for small footprint, high profit, high yield situations.
Ever thought about putting a golf course on one of them? Because I see you like to golf there over your right shoulder.
I love it, but I don't do it very well.
Hey, Kai.
Yeah, no one does.
Kai, I real quickly, I got about 30 seconds left here, real quick. With respect to outside of the scope of your exact business, if we talk about what's going on in the gold market, I mean, there's been rumblings over the last several months about crude oil heading south and gold is in a mode to bounce. What is your personal opinion, being that expert?
Well, I've got two opinions. Number one, the price of gold from our perspective, it really doesn't matter whether it's $1,300 or $1,100 or $900 or even $800.
Right.
I mean, we produce an ounce of gold for less than $150.
Sure.
It's just a question of how much profit you're pulling in on a per ounce basis. What I think we're seeing out there is just maybe the hints of some systemic fear. Italy's become a concern in Europe. Maybe there's some tariff.
Well, I can tell you the markets, just like commodities, run on fear and greed, and he's exactly right about that. Kai, thank you so much. We're going to see you next week. Kai Abraham, LKA Gold. LKAI is their stock symbol, LKA Gold Inc. You go to LKA Gold. There's a great video. If you go to LKA Gold, just Google it, or you can just go to the website. All right, Big Biz Show continues. Goodbye.